Forge Master of Fuses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 626. This is not the first time that Tang Fan and SYNOPSIS have been on the entertainment news. They were forced to be on the news once after the news of their marriage was exposed. At that time, the whole network cheered and they did not feel much. But this time, it was different. Under the guidance of someone with ulterior motives, it felt like 1,000 people were pointing fingers at them. As one of the parties involved, Tang Fan was the last to know. When she attended the new product launch conference with a big belly, under the attention of the crowd, when she was asked about this matter, the young lady was stunned for a moment without any pretense, and then answered seriously, "Thank you for telling me. As far as I know, the alliance has no clear regulations on whether married citizens choose natural conception, in vitro culture, or how many children to have. Mr. SYNOPSIS and I are just one of the thousands of married couples in the alliance. Every citizen of the alliance has the right to choose, and we are no exception. We just made the choice we should make at a normal time. I hope everyone respects our choice and does not over-interpret it. Within the moral standards, without violating the laws and regulations, as long as the other party can be responsible for their own choices, I also respect the choice of every citizen of the alliance. The above is my full explanation of this incident. Thank you." Miss Tang Fan finished her words and turned away. It was so cool. But in fact, the young lady's heart had already become a mess. You know, Song Yuanqi and Ms. Yao gave birth to quite a few children, but only SYNOPSIS survived in the world. In the eyes of most people in the alliance, marrying into the Song family is equivalent to turning into a reproductive machine. Even before Tang Fan married SYNOPSIS, she thought so. But she didn't expect that before her second child was born, SYNOPSIS chose to be sterilized secretly because he felt sorry for her. She never doubted SYNOPSIS' love for her, but she never thought that SYNOPSIS would use this method to prove it. This man's unique romance moved the calm and self-controlled Miss Tang Fan to tears. Seeing the man standing next to the aircraft, waiting for him to leave, Tang Fan almost ran over. Seeing his wife jogging with a big belly, SYNOPSIS' soul was almost scared away. He hurried forward a few steps, gently hugged his wife's waist, which was twice as thick, frowned, and whispered, "What? Are you waiting impatiently? It's my fault. I should have gone in earlier to wait for you." Tang Fan's tears in her eyes could no longer be contained in an instant, and rolled down. Feeling the heat in his chest, SYNOPSIS' brows were tightly locked together, and his expression became tense. His little girl has been strong and independent since she was young. She never cried when giving birth, but today she started to cry. What a great injustice she has suffered. Major General Song's heart began to ache. He patted Tang Fan's back and asked softly, "Did something go wrong at the press conference?" Tang Fan buried his face in SYNOPSIS' chest and shook his head. SYNOPSIS, who guessed wrong, looked down at his wife who was using her clothes as a handkerchief and trying to smear snot and tears on it, not knowing what to do. Then, "Who bullied you?" Tang Fan continued to shake his head. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to him, and SYNOPSIS, who was thoughtful, frowned directly into the shape of a character. He hummed for a long time and asked cautiously, "Did you see something?" Chapter 627. Tang Fan did not answer SYNOPSIS' question. After finally wiping his nose and tears, he nestled in SYNOPSIS' arms and said in a muffled voice, "Husband, have I ever told you that I love you?" Even though SYNOPSIS, who has become more and more calm and composed after becoming a father, could not help but be stunned when he heard his wife's declaration of love. Then, the uncontrollable joy erupted from his chest and rushed straight to his brain. His 3 souls and 7 spirits temporarily ran away from home, and his thinking temporarily stopped. Only 3 words echoed in his mind over and over again, "I love you." It was as if these 3 simple words had magic, which could make the clever Major General Song temporarily lose his mind and lose his mind. Tang Fan finally got emotional and waited for a long time, but he didn't hear a response. Pregnant women's tempers come and go, and Tang Fan was unhappy all of a sudden. The husband stopped hugging her, and instantly retracted his little hands to his waist, stamped his little feet hard, and raised his head angrily. Tang Fan, who had wanted to settle accounts with SYNOPSIS, lost her temper after seeing her husband standing there like a wooden stake. She had never thought that she would have such a great influence on Song Si. It was just a simple "I love you," but it could make his body stiffen, and a tsunami erupted from deep in his heart. This discovery made Tang Fan's emotions, which had just been restrained, burst out again, and tears fell involuntarily. The crystal tears once again dripped onto Song Si's chest, and were brushed by the breeze, revealing a slight chill, which successfully awakened Song Si's consciousness. He hurriedly wiped the pearl-like tears of his wife, which were like broken strings, and coaxed his wife in a gentle voice, "My wife is willing to love me, so I should be so excited that I shed tears. Why are you crying yourself?" Tang Fan was about to refute, but when he raised his hand, he touched the tears on his face, and it was immediately like being struck by lightning. The pregnant lady was exposed and was furious. Pregnant women are emotionally unstable, don't you know? Song Si, who was scolded, touched his nose and admitted his fault. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have deliberately provoked you when you were pregnant. All my mistakes are my fault. Calm down. Are your legs sore? Do you want to sit on the aircraft? Go home and rest for a while." Song Si's ability to change the subject was quite stiff. But Tang Fan's physical condition was complicated and the options he threw out were too tempting. The young lady could only borrow the donkey to go downhill and turn the page smoothly. With the help of Song Si, the young lady boarded the aircraft smoothly. Perhaps it was because of the excessive energy consumed at the press conference, or the excessive emotional fluctuations just now, or because Major General Song Si's driving skills were too good. Tang Fan fell asleep a few minutes after boarding the aircraft. Seeing that Tang Fan was sleeping too soundly, Song Si, who had landed for a long time, skillfully opened the cabin door and carried her to the big round bed in the princess style in his master bedroom. Fearing that Tang Fan would not sleep well, Major General Song Si also carefully fetched water and wiped his wife's face and feet. That service attitude was simply amazing. Tang Fan, who slept until she woke up naturally, couldn't help but feel dazed. Blackouts were something that Tang Fan dared not even think about before getting married. Unexpectedly, she had undergone earth-shaking changes in just a few years. It is said that pregnancy makes women stupid for 3 years. So, it is not her fault that she loves to sleep, but the part of the person in her stomach? Tang Fan pursed her lips and felt for the nth time that her husband really did a good job in sterilizing her. Chapter 628. In this wave of vigorous online storm, Tang Fan first firmly stood his ground, and then disappeared in the name of keeping the baby safe. The person who replaced Tang Fan as the spokesperson of Tang's Metro was first Zhao Jingshu, and then a little guy named Tang Si. Many reporters bullied him because he was young, and tried to dig a hole for him, but the little guy never fell into the hole. Instead he often led reporters into the ditch. Since Tang Si became independent, Tang Fan, who served as the head of Tang's Mecha and the wife of a major general, rarely appeared in the public eye. Some people with ulterior motives even spread rumors on the Star Network every now and then. What is the wife of the major general who is too ambitious, and the marriage of the youngest major general has been green-lighted? What is the wife of the major general who has not appeared for a long time, and the marshal's office is silent? Why does Tang's Mecha frequently change spokespersons? What is the frequent personnel changes in Tang's Mecha, and Tang Fan's position as the head may be lost? What is the eternal bad habit that has not changed, and the male of the Tang family has taken the position? What is the family that favors boys over girls, the savage star domain Mecha Tang? But no matter what these people do or spread, Tang Fan has never come forward. The official websites of Tang's Mecha and the Expeditionary Force have remained silent, with only some official statements such as "Don't believe in rumors, don't spread rumors. It's really a big deal, and both sides won't talk nonsense. Just send a lawyer's letter and invite the publisher of false news to sit in the major courts." Living in the Alliance, credit records are very important, and few people like to go to court. After Tang's Mecha and the Expeditionary Force sent several lawyers' letters in a row, the frequency of rumors gradually decreased. Tang Fan, the once famous figure, gradually faded out of people's sight. No one knew that the outstanding Mecha Foundry, the youngest wife of a major general in the Alliance, and the eternal head of Tang's Mecha, was now lying in the nutrition cabin, receiving joint treatment from Mr. Li Bangsha, the sisters Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi, and Song Tong. The hidden dangers buried by Anna Smith in those years finally broke out when she became a mother for the second time. When Miss Tao Qingxi cleaned and checked a handsome boy named Song Mufan, and was excited to share the good news with Tang Fan that he has both physical and mental strength that surpasses peers. She discovered that Tang Fan was abnormal. Ms. Tao Qingxi immediately called Mr. Li Bangsha and Professor Tao Bixi. The two checked for a long time, but they were at a loss. They could only tell the sad news under Song Si's expectant eyes. It is definitely a good thing that the child is excellent. But if the price is that Tang Fan is like Tang Manganese, who is in a coma for a long time, it will be different. Song Si, who was full of regret, suddenly had an absurd thought in his mind: how great it would be if this child had never appeared. Although he knew rationally that the child was innocent. But emotionally, Song Si had no way to face this child for a long time. This poor child has been living in the nutrition cabin since the day he was born. If it weren't for Ms. Yao's perception of the situation, this poor child would have to stay in the nutrition cabin for who knows how long. Ms. Yao sighed, silently took away the nutrition cabin, and took over the responsibility of raising her grandson. Song Si also acquiesced to this matter, never mentioning this poor child, as if this child had never appeared. Chapter 629. When Tang Gang's family received the news, they hurried over. After hearing about this, they all felt it was ridiculous. But when they looked at the depressed Song Si, they couldn't say a word of condemnation. Tang Gang had experienced the incident with Tang Meng, so he was considered to have some experience. Even though the girl lying in the treatment cabin was his own daughter, he couldn't be knocked down. Looking at the grief-stricken Song Si, Tang Gang curled his lips and took the initiative to take up the responsibility. While asking Zhao Jingshu to accept the job of the head of Tang's Mecha, he also asked Ms. Yao about the child's situation. After both sides were settled, Tang Gang had time to take care of Song Si, who was blaming himself. He had a lot of work on his hands. He finally had time to take care of his daughter in the treatment cabin, but he didn't have time to comfort the pig who had taken his cabbage. He just pulled Professor Tao Bixi, who had already been unable to bear it, and muttered a few words. The next day, Professor Tao Bixi came to Song Si and gave him a long list of research materials that could not be bought with money, on the grounds of research needs. After seeing the list, Major General Song Si no longer had time to feel sad about the passing of time, and actively devoted himself to the collection of rare pharmaceutical materials. As for how many of the materials collected by Major General Song Si would be used on his wife, it was hard to say. However, there was only a slight possibility that Song Si would not, and would not dare to give up. When the materials on the list of materials came to Professor Tao Bixi through various channels, Tang Gang finally had one less thing on his mind. Marshal Song Yuanqi showed 100% support for Tang Gang's amazing operation, and even took time out of his busy schedule to take on most of the responsibilities on the shoulders of the two and gave Tang Gang and Song Si a long vacation. Tang Gang was also very knowledgeable and interesting. When everything around Tang Fan was arranged properly and his health became more stable, Tang Gang consciously returned to his job. After all, the daughter I raised is sick. There is still a lot of time to take leave in the coming days. How can I not be more conscious? A silent understanding spread between Tang Gang and Song Yuanqi, the in-laws. Everyone accepted the possibility that Tang Fan would never wake up again, and was prepared for a long-term battle. I never thought that things would turn around. I never thought that the turnaround would come so quickly. It was a Thursday morning. The misty drizzle enveloped the Savage Star region, decorating it with poetic and picturesque scenery. However, people in the entire Savage Star region had no intention of appreciating it, especially the Tang's Mecha division located on planet R28. The 100th Mecha Association Joint Conference will be held here soon. Because of the outstanding performance of Tang's Mecha in recent years, it has successfully become the organizer of this conference. Although Zhao Jingshu is reluctant, she still announced this regretful news to everyone in Tang's Mecha. In order to keep the confidentiality and to ensure the smooth progress of this conference, Zhao Jingshu even gave holidays to all the key departments of mecha casting. At this moment, all the people in Tang's Mecha were trembling at their posts, waiting for the members of the Mecha Association to come and give guidance. The key point was that they were waiting for the arrival of their rival, the head of Zhang's Mecha, and their boss's half-sister, Miss Olivia Smith. Chapter 630. As the head of Zhang's Mecha, although Olivia Smith is not as smart as Tang Fan and Song Si, she is not too stupid. Olivia Smith not only saw through the differential treatment of Tang's Mecha at a glance, but also aroused a little rebellious psychology. She directly attributed this to her half-sister Tang Fan, thinking that Tang Fan was too narrow-minded, holding on to the past and deliberately making things difficult for her. During the day, she still endured it. In the dead of night, when she was alone and couldn't sleep, Olivia Smith began to feel uncomfortable. Didn't Tang Fan not let her see it? Then she had to take a look. Even if she was caught by Tang Fan by accident, what could she do to her? Anger rose from her heart, and evil was born. Olivia, who became childish when she met Tang Fan, not only dared to think, but also put it into practice. The structural layout of the mecha company was not much different, and there were only a few places that Zhao Jingshu strictly guarded. Unfortunately, Olivia Smith, who had a good memory, just remembered those places well. The R&D center was on holiday, and the management was tight on the outside but loose on the inside. Olivia Smith took advantage of it and relied on her relatively strong physical fitness to sneak in smoothly. The dark R&D center once made Olivia Smith doubt her life. It was not until she found some valuable mecha materials vaguely through the bright moonlight that Olivia was relieved. It was so embarrassing to be a thief, but find the wrong place. But when she was sure that she had found the right place, Olivia felt a little boring. She finally got in, but it seemed to be useless except for satisfying her childish confrontational emotions. How could she let Tang Fan know her dissatisfaction? You can't just write Olivia Smith was here on the wall. Olivia thought about it and prepared to take something away. Tang Fan couldn't just leave important secrets like scientific research projects and patented technologies out there. It would be hard to find them for a while, and if Tang Fan caught them, it would be a big deal. Olivia thought about it and once again cast her eyes on the precious materials placed outside. As an expert in mecha casting, Olivia was most familiar with and liked these things the most. She also believed that Tang Fan, as a mecha foundry master, had the same love for these treasures. In this way, Olivia happily decided on her mission goal. However, Tang's Mecha, as the leader of the Alliance mecha casting industry, had a lot of rare materials. Olivia looked at this and touched that, and was a little hesitant for a while. While choosing left and right, Olivia's eyes accidentally caught a black object that was neither gold nor jade. It was placed in a special transparent box, silently attracting all of Olivia's attention. The other materials in the laboratory suddenly lost their color in front of it. Olive carefully picked it up and walked towards the window with the strongest light. She looked at it in the moonlight for a long time, but still couldn't tell what material it was made of. Perhaps this is the main reason why the new mechas launched by Tang's Mecha in recent years are superior to other mechas? Olive thought about it and suddenly became alert. Chapter 631. This thought came suddenly, but it seemed to have taken root in Olivia's mind and could not be driven away. Next, Olivia did not struggle too much. In just a moment, she made the decision to take this material for herself. You can't blame Olivia for being mean. You can only blame the temptation in front of her. Anti-monopoly is the obligation of every citizen of the Alliance. Everything she did was for the Alliance's mecha casting business. With this thought, Olivia felt at ease all of a sudden, and without hesitation, she stuffed the transparent box containing the black object into her space buckle. A palm-sized box, in theory, should be easy to stuff into the space buckle. But when the transparent box in Olivia's hand came 10 centimeters above the space buckle, it seemed to encounter an invisible wall and could no longer move forward. You know, Olivia had put something in it half an hour ago, and everything was normal. So, there is no problem with this space buckle. Then, the only problem is naturally the transparent box, or the black object that even she can't tell where it comes from. No wonder Tang Fan put this thing outside. It turns out that this thing can't be put into the space buckle? Olivia understood this truth and couldn't help frowning. Unsure whether it was the materials that couldn't be put in or the box that couldn't be put in, Olivia didn't bother and decided to take the materials and the box out together. After making up her mind, Olivia took out a piece of clothing from the space buckle, wrapped the thing directly, tied it around her waist, and went to the dormitory provided by Zhao Jingshu. Along the way she came. I don't know if Zhao Jingshu's arrangement was not appropriate enough, or Olivia's strength was too strong. In just half an hour, Olivia successfully broke through various defenses and returned to her room smoothly. After confirming the safety of the environment again, Olivia couldn't wait to open her clothes and took out the transparent box that made her heart surge. Under the sufficient light source, the black object that was neither gold nor jade began to change slightly. A faint stream of light flowed on its low-key and restrained surface, as if it had life. Olivia stared at it intently, her hands involuntarily reaching out to the transparent box, And when she touched the transparent box, she raised her fist without hesitation and smashed it hard. The box broke, and Olivia's hand was injured, but she was unaware of it, and she put the injured hand directly on the black object. The second the two came into contact, a trace of blood quickly seeped out from the tiny wound and slowly dripped onto the black object that was neither gold nor jade. After a while, the palm-sized black object was covered with blood, and even a part of it had already seeped into it and began to flow slowly with a stream of light. The bright red color made the black object come alive all of a sudden, as if it was given invisible life. Olivia, who was pale due to excessive blood loss, was unaware of it, and just stared at the black object stupidly until she could no longer hold on and fainted. Until the moment she fainted, Olivia had not figured out what the black object she had taken from the laboratory was. She also did not know that the object she took away had nothing to do with Tang's new mecha. Chapter 632. Olivia didn't know that the black object that absorbed her blood began to emit a dazzling red light after she fell unconscious, illuminating most of the sky of the planet R25. In the Savage Star region, anyone who is not blind could feel this dazzling light. Just when the participants in the same dormitory were eager to try, Zhao Jingshu, the organizer, had already led people to seal off the first scene. The person involved, Olivia, was also quickly carried out and rushed to the medical room. Seeing that the person who was still fine in the evening was carried out sideways, many people peeked out, and many took photos and recorded videos. The participants had different thoughts, the only difference was that some people hid better, while some people couldn't hide at all. Zhao Jingshu saw it and was anxious in her heart. She was not sure how long the Tang's mecha could hold out with the current number of security guards. Although she had sent a message to Tangang for help, and Tangang also assured her, Zhao Jingshu's heart would be hanging if the support of the expeditionary force did not arrive for a minute. Fortunately, the reinforcements came quickly. Under the leadership of Song Yuanqi, a regiment of soldiers escorted Old Man Li Bangsha, Tao Qingxi, Tao Bixi, and several pharmacists in the medical room of the expeditionary army. Some people who were ready to make a move calmed down the moment they saw Song Yuanqi. Zhao Jingshu, who finally found a backbone, breathed a sigh of relief. Zhao Jingshu simply explained the situation to Song Yuanqi, and Song Yuanqi, who knew what was going on, automatically took over the planet. Song Yuanqi was relieved about the people of Tang's mecha. But Song Yuanqi was not so relieved about the other people who attended the meeting. Although he brought a regiment of soldiers, Song Yuanqi still felt it was not enough. Just in case, Song Yuanqi politely invited all the participants to experience the characteristics of the Savage Star region, the 7-day tour of the Expeditionary Army recruit training. Song Yuanqi provided nothing but a training backpack for new recruits with nothing but 3 days of drinking water. He threw the mecha casting industry bosses who could cause earthquakes in the alliance with a stomp of their feet to a planet to be developed not far from the planet R25. The only two exceptions, Zhao Jingshu, who was already familiar with this trick, and Olivia, who was lying in the medical room and was checked over and over by the pharmacists with various instruments. Olivia, who failed to steal the chicken but lost the rice, was checked over and over by the enthusiastic pharmacists for 3 hours. From hair to toes, all the body data was recorded by this group of disrespectful pharmacists. Privacy? It doesn't exist. Not only that, this group of people also dug out the body data that Olivia left at the Blue Sea Mecha Academy many years ago and compared them. The scene was very lively for a while. It was not until Mr. Li Bangsha called everyone to discuss the treatment plan that the hot scene suddenly became deserted. Seeing everyone's lack of interest, Mr. Li Bangsha didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seems that you don't want to rescue Olivia Smith at all, right? In this way, you can treat the head of Zhang's mecha as a guinea pig in your laboratory and keep him in captivity for your research, right? Have you forgotten that Tang Fan is still waiting for us? Chapter 633. Old Master Li Bangsha's earth-shattering words successfully brought back everyone's sanity. That's right. They have a more important research object, Tang Fan. Compared with Tang Fan, the unconscious Olivia is really nothing. Especially in the territory of the Savage Star region, there is a world of difference. They are obviously a pair of half-sisters. Why is the difference so big? No. The 7 words half-sisters passed through Tao Qingxi's mind, making her squint her eyes. With a slight movement of her fingers, she pulled out a physical examination report of Tang Fan before he fell into coma and put it together with a physical examination report of Olivia before and after he fell into coma. The next second, A data comparison chart of the 3-point report appeared in front of Tao Qingxi. Tao Qingxi looked at it item by item, and her eyes became brighter and brighter. When she raised her eyes from the report and looked at Olivia, her eyes were a little wrong. It was like a traveler who had been thirsty for 3 days and 3 nights, and finally found that little water source in the oasis. Noticing that something was wrong with her, Tao Qingxi came over immediately. Tao Qingxi said nothing, but just sent the data comparison chart she had just read. The tacit understanding of being from the same mother made Tao Qingxi shut up and quietly look at the data comparison chart in her hand. After a while, Tao Qingxi's symptoms were transmitted to Tao Qingxi. Seeing the two sisters staring at Olivia with burning eyes, as if thinking about the most appropriate place to cut, the other pharmacists could not sit still, and their eyes were cast at the same time on Tao Qingxi's computer screen, which was not turned off. After that, every pharmacist who looked at the screen went crazy like the Tao sisters. Even Mr. Li Bangsha was not spared after looking at those data comparison charts, and his eyes looked at Olivia with a little more eagerness. It was the eagerness of a hungry diner who saw the excellent steak on the plate and immediately took up his knife and fork, thinking about where to start. If Zhao Jingshu had not presented the black object, which was stained with Olivia's blood and was once again put into a transparent box, in time, I really don't know what terrible things these pharmacists would have done. This object that caused Olivia's body data to change and made her unconscious was something that half of the pharmacists present had never seen. After seeing the box in Zhao Jingshu's hand, Mr. Li Bangsha's enthusiasm for Olivia was more or less reduced. In other words, he divided part of his enthusiasm for scientific research on the black object that Zhao Jingshu handed to him. The object with red light, which was neither gold nor jade, was not a plant or a mineral, but a part of a mutant organism. It was the heart of a mutant organism, the most dangerous experimental product on the entire R25 planet, and it belonged to Zhao Jin alone. Mr. Li Bangsha had never agreed with Zhao Jin's behavior. Unexpectedly, by accident, he actually created Olivia's special case. Mr. Li Bangsha did not agree with human experiments, but he did not mind helping special patients get rid of the troubles of diseases. I don't mind accumulating some experience along the way. In a sense, Zhao Jin's move was a mistake, and Mr. Li Bangsha was just following the trend. So, Olivia got what she deserved. The eldest daughter of Zhang's Mecha became a lab guinea pig. It's really sad and lamentable. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 634. Olivia and Tang Fan have extremely similar physical data. In addition to having the same paternal genes, they also had a medicine before they were born, which weakened the effect of their maternal genes. However, the causes of their coma were very different. Tang Fan suddenly fell into coma after giving birth, while Olivia fell into coma because of the tempting mutant heart in Zhao Jin's laboratory. Old Master Li Bangsha stared at the mutant heart soaked in blood seriously, narrowed his eyes, and tapped on the transparent box. No. The reason why Tang Fan and Olivia fell into coma may be the same. Old Master Li Bangsha changed to regular detector and did a precise test on Olivia's blood content. Looking at the obviously low blood content, thinking about the amount of bleeding that Tang Fan on the operating table had when Song Mufan was born, which was different from the first child. This discovery seemed to hit Old Master Li Bangsha. He stood there blankly and began to doubt himself. Old Master Li Bangsha stood there for half a day. When he finally came to his senses, the first thing he did was to do a blood test on Olivia. You wouldn't know until you check it, and you'll be shocked. Olivia's blood is nothing like everyone else's blood in the alliance, except for the color. Seeing this result, Mr. Li Bangsha's hands couldn't help but tremble. He immediately found Song Yuanqi, and the first thing he said was that he wanted to go back to his laboratory. Although he didn't know why Mr. Li Bangsha made such a request, as long as it was beneficial to Tang Fan, Song Yuanqi would never refuse. Anyway, the distance was not far, and the small warship gave an order and took Mr. Li Bangsha back directly. More than an hour later, Mr. Li Bangsha held Tang Fan's blood test report and remained silent. The blood analysis data was similar to Olivia's, but the blood content was lower than Olivia's. The human body has its own hematopoietic function. Tang Fan has been lying in the treatment cabin for so long, but there has been no improvement. If this continues, Mr. Li Bangxia couldn't help shaking his head. Logically speaking, what is lacking should be supplemented. Tang Fan lacks blood, so blood transfusion should be given. But thinking about Olivia's blood content, which is much lower than that of normal people, Mr. Li Bangxia hesitated. He has been saving people all his life, and he can't do something against his conscience to save one person and kill one person. After hesitating for a long time, Mr. Li Bangxia sighed, sorted out his findings, packed them and sent them to Song Tong. Song Tong always paid attention to Mr. Li Bangxia's news. The moment he received the file package, he opened it and read it carefully word by word. The content of the file package was not much, and even if Song Tong read it carefully, he finished it in just 1 hour. After reading the report, Song Tong smiled. As a military doctor, Song Tong's mission is to treat Tang Fan, so she will complete her mission at all costs. Since the main reason for Tang Fan's coma is excessive blood loss and insufficient hematopoietic function, she will try every means to supplement Tang Fan's blood. Let's start with a wave of drugs that improve hematopoiesis, and let's do a blood test for all members of the expeditionary force. If necessary, it's not impossible to borrow Miss Olivia Smith's blood. However, given Tang Fan's rejection of the Smith family in Mr. Li Bangxia's damn professional ethics, Song Tong was not going to use Olivia as a last resort. Chapter 635. However, Tang Fan and Olivia have special physiques, so blood tests for all members of the expeditionary force are useless. The medicine that improves hematopoietic function has a slight effect on Olivia, but it can't cause any ripples on Tang Fan, whose blood content is even lower. Song Tong tried almost all other methods he could think of. Just when Song Tong was powerless and once again turned his attention to Olivia, Ms. Yao, who had left the Savage Star region for only a few days, returned with the newly born Song Yufan. When she saw Song Tong for the first time, Ms. Yao said nothing, but silently handed over a blood test report. The blood test report, which was different from 99.999% of the people in the entire alliance, successfully attracted Song Tong's attention. When Song Tong looked at the ignorant little Song Yufan in the nutrition cabin, the excitement in his heart suddenly faded away. Mom, the child is still young? Ms. Yao glanced at Song Yufan, who was still sleeping, and smiled bitterly. It is because he is still young that he cannot miss his mother and bear the sin that he should not bear. It is his fate to match. It is also his fate to not match. Ms. Yao's words made Song Tong shudder. She took a deep look at Song Yufan, closed her eyes, gritted her teeth, and sent the blood test report to Mr. Li Bangxia. After receiving the report, Mr. Li Bangxia quickly sent a video request, but after learning about the situation, he remained silent. When the two pharmacists were undecided, Ms. Yao stood up decisively, and threw the question to the child's father and grandfather. The decisive Song father and son hesitated for a rare time. After discussing for a long time, they finally came up with a plan: give Olivia and Song Yufan drugs to improve hematopoiesis at the same time, and regularly extract the corresponding blood and inject it into Tang Fan's body. Of course, as an adult, Olivia can be appropriately extracted more when necessary. At the same time, blood tests were carried out on all people and their descendants in Jim Field's archives. We strive to find this type of blood that is artificially created as soon as possible to relieve the pressure on Olivia and Song Yufan. The blood of the group of people in Cheyenne's Star region was not right at first glance, so they were directly excluded. Those who underwent blood tests were all the people who were guarded by the expeditionary army and the group of people who were fished out of the land of sin, as well as Tang Fan and Song Si's beloved daughter, Song Yufan. However, I don't know whether it was lucky or unfortunate, but the blood of 3-year-old Song Yufan was as normal as her father. On the contrary, the blood of several genetically modified people was similar to that of Tang Fan, Olivia, and Song Yufan. Since the blood test results are similar, it can be purified and filtered, maybe, and possibly used. Of course, it was not used on Tang Fan, who was spoiled by everyone, but on Olivia. In the hands of these pharmacists, Olivia was completely reduced to a blood cow that provided blood for Tang Fan. It was voluntary labor, unpaid, and she didn't even have the qualifications to hum like Song Yufan. This might be the legendary stealing a chicken but losing the rice. Who made her attack the Tang's mecha first? She hit a wall. Chapter 636. Rome was not built in a day, and Tang Fan's illness can't be cured in a day. Even with a blood cow Olivia and the occasional supply from Song Yufan, It took a full 3 months for Tang Fan's blood content to reach the standard of a normal person. Tang Fan's various physical indicators gradually stabilized as the blood content increased, but there was still no sign of awakening. Another month later, the blood cow Olivia woke up, but Tang Fan was still unconscious. Both Mr. Li Bangxia and Song Tong felt that it would take an opportunity for Tang Fan to wake up. As for where this opportunity was, the two pharmacists were at a loss. However, Song Si, who had returned from a long journey, saw Tang Fan in the treatment cabin, whose complexion was obviously much better, and his expression softened a lot. In view of the fact that Song Mufan had helped with a condition, he no longer ignored this son. Although it was impossible to do as much as Song Afan in a short period of time, at least he was no longer avoided like a snake and scorpion. The change in Song Si's attitude made Ms. Yao breathe a sigh of relief. People are all made of flesh and blood. As long as Song Si no longer rejects Song Mufan and gets closer to him, the relationship between father and son will eventually ease. As for Tang Fan, being alive is hope. Tang Fan has been lying there for 15 years. The sun still rises as usual, Tang's mecha and expeditionary forces are still booming, Song Si has already become a general, Song Afan is about to graduate from the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, and Song Mufan is about to enter the school that carries the memories of his parents. However, Tang Fan still lies quietly in the treatment cabin, waiting for her opportunity. Influenced by their parents, Song Afan and Song Mufan are different in character and profession. Song Afan grew up healthily and successfully became an infectious little son under the pampering of everyone. This warm-hearted little son understood his responsibilities very early, and he majored in command and mecha casting. The girl was very talented. Not only did she balance the two, she also used her personal charm and leadership skills to form her own team, and took the team to win the first place in the Alliance military quality competition for 3 consecutive years. Although it is a little thin compared to Song Yuanxi and Song Si, it is already very good among her peers. Compared with the radiant Song Afan, Song Mufan is much more low-key. Song Mufan is extremely talented, and his qualifications are even better than Song Afan. But it is precisely because of this that he understood very early that the people around him treated his sister differently from himself. Children are very curious. With his unremitting efforts, Song Mufan, who was only 6 years old, figured out the reason for this different treatment. The burden that Ms. Yao didn't want him to carry was still carried by this precocious child. From that day on, Song Mufan gave up his favorite mechas and aircraft, and instead followed Mr. Li Bangxia and the sisters Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi for a long time, dealing with biology and medicinal materials. Even after entering the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy, he did not choose any other majors, and focused on studying pharmacy. Song Mufan had a lot on his mind, and he had been following adults for a long time, and he studied pharmacy, which was known for its rigor. Although he was only 15 years old, he had the mature temperament of a little adult. Chapter 637. On the day when Song Mufan received the admission letter from the pharmacy department of Blue Sea Mecha Academy, Song Si said to him, "Well done." These 4 simple words made the mature Song Mufan burst into tears. If he hadn't remembered the family motto of men shed blood but not tears, he would have cried on the spot. Since then, Song Mufan's obsession with awakening Tang Fan has deepened. As the son of Song Si and Tang Fan, his IQ is not low. In addition, Mr. Li Bangxia and the 2 sisters of the Tao family have been training him. Although Song Mufan has just entered the gate of Blue Sea Mecha Academy, his professional ability is not inferior to that of his senior brothers and sisters. But it is also because he has been with Mr. Li Bangxia and others for too long, and he has too many things to bear. In addition to reading books, doing experiments, and writing papers all day, it is inevitable that he has neglected many things. For example, friends. When the school needs to organize a group trial, Song Mufan is confused. As a top student in pharmacy, he was left alone. Not to mention that the teachers of Blue Sea Mecha Academy did not believe it, even the whole Wild Star region was stunned when they heard the news. Although he was born in an extraordinary family and his professional ability was first class, he had no teammates. Little Song Mufan had only 2 ways to go, either face the team trial task alone, or give up this team trial. I thought this was a sad story of a child who had no friends and lost credits in desperation. Who knew that little Song Mufan actually chose to challenge the team trial task alone? Not only that, this guy also played his eloquence that he never showed off on weekdays, and fought with his scholars to win the right he should have the supplies for the entire team. Song Mufan, who had no one to hold him back, not only relied on these supplies to avoid the trouble of finding food, but also relied on his professional ability to easily complete the team trial task and get the highest score in the team trial. It was not until this time that everyone realized that it was not a Blue Sea Mecha Academy pharmacy that admitted Song Mufan, but Song Mufan chose the Blue Sea Mecha Academy pharmacy. Because, with the ability Song Mufan showed in the team trial, as long as he wanted, he could go to any school in the Alliance and study any major he liked. Since then, everyone's eyes on Song Mufan have become different. But Song Mufan didn't care at all. Every day, he went from classroom to library to laboratory, perfectly avoiding the cafeteria and dormitory, and it was natural for him to be alone. Even his sister Song Afan, who was born to the same mother, returned to school to give a speech, but this guy could refuse on the grounds that the majors are different and there is no reference value. Song Afan even took the initiative to chase Song Mufan to the door of the classroom, and appealed to his emotions and reason. Seeing that he was about to be buried in spit, Song Mufan reluctantly took out a precious hour of time to accompany the sister who came from afar to have dinner and keep in touch. A forced melon is not sweet, and forced companionship is of no quality. Although Song Afan forced Song Mufan's body, he could not change Song Mufan's mind. For a whole hour, the brother and sister maintained the mode of you talking and I listening. As for whether they listen or not, only Song Mufan himself knew. During this meal, Song Mufan just regarded it as fulfilling his brother's obligations, and finished it hastily, without tasting anything. Song Afan didn't even eat a few bites, and felt that he was full of anger. Chapter 638. Song Afan spent a whole hour giving a speech on the benefits of making friends. Unfortunately, her only audience had no interest in it. When the time came, Song Mufan stood up without hesitation, waved to Song Afan, and walked away. Song Afan was left standing there, so angry that she couldn't say a word, and she just felt her headache. Song Mufan, who turned around gracefully, also felt her headache. He wasted an hour to comfort his sister, but ended up listening to her personal speech. Song Afan's words were many and dense, and there were many loopholes, like a few mosquitoes, buzzing around his ears. Several times, he wanted to refute. However, thinking about the consequences of refutation, he silently chose to shut up. Now, after finally saying goodbye to Song Afan, Song Mufan is full of energy, and it is no problem to do 3 or 5 more experiments. Because of Song Mufan's spirit of research, he, who was only 15 years old, had only spent 1 year in the laboratory of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy and had achieved many research results. Among them, there are several projects in the field of genetic research, which is weak in the Alliance. This move caused a sensation in the entire Alliance. For a time, all the glory came to Song Mufan, and some people on the Star Network pushed Song Mufan to the height of the leader of the Alliance's genetic research. Song Mufan sneered at this obvious act of flattery, and did not even show his face. He continued to do what he should do. His calm appearance was quite like Tang Fan's style in the past. Song Afan was very excited after hearing these remarks. He specially picked out a few typical examples of people who were afraid of chaos in the world and sent them a lawyer's letter. Although the evidence was insufficient and the lawsuit was not won, there were obviously fewer discussions. After this battle, although no one continued to flatter him, Song Mufan still quietly reduced the number of patent applications and paper publications, and improved the technical content of his patents and papers. This kind of change, if not an expert, can't see the reason at all. And the experts who can understand it, are either in the Blue Sea Mecha Academy or in the Expeditionary Force. Song Mufan is very relieved. I thought that this would avoid those false remarks. Unexpectedly, rumors about Song Mufan's lack of talent spread on the Star Network. Song Mufan, who couldn't do anything right, rubbed his temples and decided to stay away from the Star Network and do what he should do. Excuse? There is no such thing. After all, Song Mufan's standard for success is different from others. His evaluation criteria are not how much wealth he creates, whether he promotes productivity, whether he promotes human progress. In Song Mufan's mind, the only standard for success is whether he can awaken Tang Fan. This is his shackles, pursuits, missions, obligations. Although it is a bit heavy, he can't let it go and can only move forward with the burden. In the year when Song Mufan was obsessed with experiments and papers and couldn't extricate himself, the head of Zhang's Mecha, Miss Olivia Smith, an older unmarried young woman, finally got married. Hearing this news, Song Mufan's eyes flashed with excitement. In order to congratulate this cheap aunt on her wedding, Song Mufan specially bought a large amount of albizia from all over the alliance to the capital star. With the help of Mr. Li Bangsha, the Tao sisters, and grandmother Ms. Yao, they were successfully transplanted near Olivia's new house. For a long time, Olivia and her new husband lived in harmony. Chapter 639. Since they were married and lived in harmony, it was natural for Olivia Smith, who was in love with her, to be pregnant. Upon hearing the news that Miss Olivia Smith was pregnant, the Zhang family was delighted. Of course, Song Mufan, who was far away on the Blue Sea Star, was also very happy. He curled his lips with satisfaction, and reminded his subordinates every 3 meals, seemingly inadvertently, not to forget to water the batch of albizia on the capital star. Although albizia likes water, it is far from being watered 3 times a day. With the tireless reminders of little Song Mufan, this batch of albizia bought at a high price successfully rotted and died. Seeing the dead branches and leaves, the flower growers burst into tears, and their voices were still trembling when they reported to Song Mufan. Song Mufan knew that he had done something wrong, so he put down his research and persuaded him earnestly for a long time. In the end, he swore to the sky that he would not deduct his salary or hold him accountable, and only then did he coax him. After finally coaxing the gardener, Song Mufan had a new understanding. Doing bad things is not an easy thing. You need to be thick-skinned and black-hearted, you need to be smart and have good acting skills. He has only done this once in his life, and it made him physically and mentally exhausted. Obviously, he is not the material for doing bad things. Thinking that if he fails to successfully drag Olivia into the water this time, he will have to plot again, and Song Mufan feels a headache. Fortunately, God is looking after Song Mufan. What Song Mufan was worried about did not happen. When Olivia Smith was 3 months pregnant, because of the excessive reaction during pregnancy and insufficient nutrition intake, she was forced to remove the fetus and put it in an artificial shell for incubation. As the head of the second largest mecha casting company in the alliance, Miss Olivia Smith, who is not short of money, chose the affiliated hospital of the first academy of the alliance with the most complete medical conditions in the capital star, and appointed the head of obstetrics and gynecology, Dr. Rudolph Brim, to perform the operation. Except that the amount of bleeding was slightly more than that of ordinary parturients, the operation went smoothly. While suturing, Olivia Smith passed out. Rudolph Brim initially thought that it was just the effect of anesthesia and did not raise enough vigilance. But 8 hours after the operation, Olivia Smith still showed no signs of waking up, and Rudolph Brim was panicked. Although he tried his best to make up for it, and even summoned all the experts from the First Alliance College Hospital to come for consultation, he could not find the cause of the disease. In the end, he had to bite the bullet and admit the medical accident in front of the family. Olivia Smith's husband collapsed on the spot, but Zhang Awei, who was standing aside, was thoughtful. She ignored Rudolph Brim, who looked guilty, and contacted Grandpa Li Bangsha as soon as possible. Grandpa Li Bangsha, who was warm-hearted, was ordered to take charge of the emergency. He immediately took his team and took the fastest small starship to the capital star to take over Olivia Smith, who was helpless in the First Alliance College Hospital. Song Mufan was young and thin-skinned. Facing the grateful Zhang Awei, he couldn't help but flicker his eyes. Fortunately, Zhang Awei's attention was on Mr. Li Bangsha, otherwise, he would be exposed. Chapter 640. The person who knows Olivia Smith best in the world is not her parents, nor her newlywed husband, but Grandpa Li Bangsha. For various reasons, Grandpa Li Bangsha not only has all the physical examination data since she entered the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. Even her father Willie Smith, mother Zhang Awei, and even her newlywed husband and newborn child, their physical examination data, Grandpa Li Bangsha has a copy. The detailed physical examination data of 3 generations were placed in front of Grandpa Li Bangsha, making many points that he couldn't understand before suddenly become clear. Grandpa Li Bangsha, who took good notes, contacted Song Si with satisfaction and asked him to organize the genetically modified people who transfused blood to Olivia last time, purify the blood drawn from them, and send it to the capital star as soon as possible and transfer it to Olivia's body. After the rescue, Olivia's blood content reached the standard, and her physical data became more and more similar to Tang Fan. The Zhang family had a fortune to inherit, and Olivia's pregnancy and childbirth were also planned. All Song Mufan could do was to bring Olivia Smith's plan forward a little. Song Mufan was not sure how similar Olivia's and Tang Fan's physical data were. Now, the data comparison results came out, and the similarity was as high as 82%. Song Mufan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and he had more confidence in waking up Tang Fan. Young people always have some unrealistic ideas. Song Mufan didn't dare to mess with Tang Fan, but used all of them on Olivia Smith, his cheap aunt. Although Song Mufan was not very old, his attainments in pharmacy were not low. Although not every idea was so reliable, at least 6 or 7 out of 10 ideas were good. He teamed up with Mr. Lee Banksha and the Tao sisters to toss for half a year, and really woke up Olivia Smith. Although Olivia Smith's physical condition after waking up was not very ideal, it was also a great improvement, enough to make the family ecstatic. Of course, the comrades in the medical team were also very happy. Especially Song Mufan and Lee Banksha. After all, with this example, they were confident that they could wake up Tang Fan, who had been sleeping for many years. Therefore, the master and apprentice did not even attend the banquet to celebrate Olivia's awakening, and hurriedly boarded a private starship to return to the Savage Star region. Even when they were on the starship, the master and apprentice were not idle. The two of them got together and constantly improved the treatment plan that had been tested on Olivia. When there was a disagreement, the two would also bring the Tao sisters to judge. With the tireless efforts of the master and apprentice, Tang Fan's treatment plan was finally finalized when the starship entered the port. Before the starship stopped, the treatment plan was transmitted to Song Tong's optical brain. When Song Mufan and Lee Banksha walked into the medical room of the Expeditionary Army, Song Tong had already brought people to complete all the preparations. That speed, that efficiency, it's amazing. Because of this speed and efficiency, Tang Fan's treatment process was quite smooth. Tang Fan's physical condition was better than Olivia's, his treatment plan was more complete, and the medicine he used was better than Olivia's. In just 4 months, Tang Fan completed all 3 stages of treatment and woke up. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 641 Seeking External Aid. Tang Fan felt that he had slept for a long time, and his whole body was aching. After trying for a long time, he finally opened his eyes and saw old man Lee Banksha and the young man next to him who looked like Song Si and looked at him excitedly. Tang Fan frowned, looked at old man Lee Banksha, and asked carefully, "Who is this?" This sentence made the young man's expression gradually solidify. Old man Lee Banksha patted his shoulder, glanced at Tang Fan, and said unhappily, "How can you be such a mother? You can't even recognize your own son." Tang Fan was stunned when he heard it. Did she just give birth to a child in the infirmary? In a blink of an eye, the child is so big. She might have given birth to Nezha. However, old man Lee Banksha is not a person who will joke casually. Tang Fan pondered for a moment, hurriedly opened his light brain, and checked the date. The next second, his expression also solidified. Old Master Lee Banksha sighed and took over the conversation. After you gave birth to your Song Mufan, you fell into coma due to excessive blood loss. This coma lasted for 16 years. Fortunately, your Song Mufan worked hard, otherwise, you would still be lying. You still have the nerve to ask who he is. Isn't it guilty? Old Master Lee Banksha's heart-wrenching words, although very watery, also successfully aroused Tang Fan's guilt. As a strong and upright female man, no, a girl, Tang Fan has always been responsible. This kind of thing of not recognizing her own son, even if there is a reason, it also hurts the child's young heart. Tang Fan looked at his somewhat unfamiliar son very obediently and said, I'm sorry that I didn't recognize you at first sight. I'm sorry that I didn't grow up with you. I'm sorry that you worked hard." These 3 simple words are full of thousands of words. Through Song Mufan's ears, they directly hit his heart and evoked many memories of the young man. Everything that he had endured in the past 16 years, all the reluctance, grievances and pressure, collapsed in front of these 3 words, and turned into a line of tears. The boy, who was not used to expressing his emotions, quickly turned his head away. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop the trend of tears falling. The moment he saw the boy's tears, a trace of panic flashed in Tang Fan's eyes. She was not good at comforting others, and she was even more at a loss when facing her own child who had missed her for 16 years. Encouraged by the eyes of old man Li Bangsha, Tang Fan, who was clumsy in words, raised her hand with difficulty and rubbed the boy's head. The good touch made Tang Fan understand all of a sudden why everyone liked to rub their heads. Tang Fan's body and mind suddenly became happy. But the little boy under her hands was not very happy physically and mentally. The boy who was rubbed stiffened instantly, and the tears that could not be stopped immediately. He turned his head stiffly and looked at Tang Fan with disbelief. Under the boy's gaze, Tang Fan moved the palm that was still on the boy's head again. Then, Tang Fan finally put down his hand with satisfaction, and said shamelessly, "It's our first meeting, please take care of me." Song Mufan looked at his mother's pale and thin hand with a complicated expression, and said slowly, Both. Listening to the unusual conversation between the mother and son, old man Li Bangsha was speechless. He couldn't warm up this place. Or find external help. Little son Song Afan, maybe it's a good choice? Chapter 642 Are you awake? The resourceful old man Li Bangsha used the optical brain to quickly find external help. Unfortunately, the little son Song Afan was busy with official duties and had no time to spare, so he was unable to come to the rescue in the first place. However, Song Si, who was always paying attention to his wife, hurried over. With a face full of sweat and panic, how could he be a general of the alliance? Calm and composed? Not at all. As long as he faced Tang Fan, General Song immediately took off the calm and elegant coat of the capital star and turned into an ordinary man crazy about love. A man who would travel thousands of miles to see his sweetheart. A man who would slow down and tidy up his clothes when he saw his sweetheart. Song Si was exhausted and hurried all the way, sweating profusely, but when she saw Tang Fan waking up, she just slowed down, walked over gently, held her hand, and said softly, "Are you awake?" Every morning after marriage, when she woke up, she would hear that most common sentence, with a familiar taste, which made Tang Fan's ears soften and her eyes red. Tang Fan held Song Si's hand, followed his words, and said softly, "I accidentally slept a little longer and made you worry." "I'm sorry." Song Si held back her tears, raised her hand and scratched Tang Fan's nose, and joked, "I'm not a 3-year-old child, and you can't just say sorry to get away with it. You have to promise me that there will be no next time." Tang Fan raised his hand obediently and said obediently, "I promise that from today on, I will go to bed early and get up early, and never sleep in again." Song Si smiled with satisfaction for the first time since they met. Of course, it was also the first smile from the heart in 16 years. That smile was like the spring flowers blooming, the spring breeze blowing, the spring light dazzling, and it stunned Song Mufan who was standing beside him. Seeing this, old man Li Bangsha couldn't help but shook his head, stretched out his hand to grab his own close disciple who didn't have much sense, and dragged him out of the ward to make room for the two lovers who had reunited after a long separation. Eating some dog food is nothing. What if you see something you shouldn't see? Old man Li Bangsha recalled the methods that Song Si used on Xia Audio in those years, and couldn't help but shudder. He closed the door of the ward, patted Song Mufan on the shoulder, and said earnestly, "Child, the old saying is right, parents are true love, children are accidents. Your sister is at least a pleasant surprise." You, old master Li Bangsha sighed, gave his closed disciple a look of and then continued, "Child, as a master and disciple, I must give you a few pieces of advice. First, you must have a clear understanding of your family status." When the family status was mentioned, little Song Mufan suddenly wilted. Old master Li Bangsha patted his shoulder, silently comforted him, and continued, "Think about the good side. The worst is this, it can't be much worse." Right. This made so much sense that Song Mufan was speechless. Seeing Song Mufan's admiring eyes, Grandpa Li Bangsha touched his beard with satisfaction and said with a smile, "However, since your mother has woken up, if you want to improve your family status and have a good life in the future, there are ways." Song Mufan looked at Grandpa Li Bangsha with a question mark on his face. Grandpa Li Bangsha, who likes to teach others, paused for a moment, and then happily explained, "In fact, if you want to get along in your family, you only need to remember 2 things. First, when your father is not around, you must try your best to win your mother's favor. Second, when your father is around, you must try to reduce your presence." Chapter 643 Nice to meet you. Song Mufan looked at old man Li Bangsha, then at the closed door, and was dumbfounded for a long time before he closed his mouth and pursed his lips. Thinking about what he had done over the years and what Song Fan had done, Song Fan finally realized that the difference in family status between the siblings was not just because of gender and Tang Fan. Song Fan was a smart man. After realizing the key to the problem, he suddenly changed his style of behavior. Although he couldn't run to Tang Fan to gain favor when Song Si was not around, he was already very skilled at reducing his presence when Song Si was around. Song Si, the bad dad, was very satisfied with Song Fan's knowledge and interest. Because of Tang Fan's awakening and Song Fan's knowledge and interest, Song Si's attitude towards this accident was somewhat relaxed. Song Si didn't think highly of Song Fan in other aspects, but he recognized his professional ability. However, Song Si's recognition was slightly different from others. His way of recognition was, use things that are useful casually. Whenever Tang Fan felt uncomfortable, the first person Song Si thought of was his useless son. As soon as Song Fan's light brain sounded, Song Si's face appeared on the screen. Without saying a word, Song Fan knew to run to Tang Fan's ward. From small things like itchy scalp to big things like the sequelae of medicine, everything related to Tang Fan was the top priority for Song Fan. Seeing Song Si's nervousness, Song Fan finally understood what Mr. Li Bangsha said, parents are true love, and children are accidents. However, it was precisely because of this that Song Fan registered with Tang Fan before Song Fan, who was busy with official duties. Tang Fan was indeed a new mother who had been in a coma for 16 years, but she had also been Tang Yang's daughter for so many years. Although she was not good at dealing with children, she knew that the way Song Si and Song Fan got along with each other was not right. She was not familiar with Song Fan, but she knew Song Si very well. Although Song Si did not mention everything in the past 16 years, nor did he mention the two children, given how much Song Si valued her, he would definitely take his anger out on the children after she suddenly fell into coma. Song Si frequently summoned Song Fan, which was indeed partly because Song Si was making a fuss, but there were also one or two times, it was Tang Fan who did it. The reason? Of course, Miss Tang Fan missed her son. However, 16 years is not so easy to smooth over. Tang Fan met little friend Song Fan for a full 16 times, but still could not organize her words. It was not until little Song Fan completed Song Si's summoning task for the 17th time and was about to leave that Tang Fan finally plucked up the courage and grabbed the hem of the boy's clothes. The boy's thin body froze in an instant. He turned his head and stared blankly at the dry fingers, motionless. It was like someone had cast a spell to freeze him. With the strength of little Song Fan, it would be easy to get rid of the hand of a woman who had just woken up and was not doing her best. But the young boy didn't make any move, just staring at Tang Fan with confusion in his eyes. That look almost made Tang Fan forget the speech he had prepared for 3 days. The mother and son were deadlocked for a minute before Tang Fan coughed softly to break the deadlock. You were just born and your sister was only 3 years old when I fell into coma. I'm sorry for missing the most important 16 years of your life. I know that what's missed is missed, and no amount of compensation will help. But I still want to try. Tang Fan paused, raised his hand that was holding Song Fan's clothes, and said seriously, my name is Tang Fan, nice to meet you. Chapter 644. Tang Fan's words were very light, but every word was like a heavy hammer, hitting Song Fan's heart. He remembered Tang Fan's I'm sorry when he just woke up, and the feeling of the dry and warm hand brushing over his head. He remembered the words it's our first meeting, please take care of me, and heard the unexpected words nice to meet you. For a moment, Song Fan was overwhelmed with emotions. Facing Tang Fan's smiling face and expectant eyes, Song Fan unconsciously stretched out his hand and placed it in Tang Fan's palm. The moment the two hands were clasped together, the smile on Tang Fan's face became even stronger. Since then, this pair of most familiar strangers finally restored normal diplomatic relations. Unlike other mothers and sons, the relationship between Tang Fan and Song Fan was more like that of gradually close friends. When Song Fan finally finished his work and rushed to the Savage Star region, Tang Fan and Song Fan were already very familiar with each other. Even in the laboratory that Song Fan could not enter, Tang Fan could come and go freely. When she saw Song Fan follow Tang Fan out of the laboratory, follow Tang Fan into the restaurant, and sit face to face with Song Si to have lunch together, that little mouth never closed. Is this still the Song Fan she knew, the one who had to check the time when eating with her? The Song Mufan who regarded time as his life and was obsessed with learning and experiments? The Song Mufan that she had spent so many years trying to change? Who switched her brother? Or maybe she recognized the wrong person? Song Afan was about to make a move to confirm, but was stopped by Song Si. Song Mufan is currently studying two new topics. One is the adaptability of mutant organisms and their side effects. The other is the impact of mechanical organs on the human body. Song Afan looked at his father without knowing what was going on, and asked weakly, "Is there any connection between this and Song Mufan's current appearance?" Song Si sneered, "These two topics were proposed by your mother, and she is also fully responsible for the project funds." Without Song Si explaining too much, Song Afan understood everything. Song Mufan is still the same Song Mufan who regards learning and experimentation as her life, but her clever mother took advantage of her and caught her lifeline. Old people are still the best, Song Si agreed with his comment. He glanced at a mother and son who were discussing fiercely, and made sure that they would not notice him for a while. Then he whispered in Song Afan's ear, "This is just the beginning. When Song Mufan's research is on the road and the demand for mutants increases, there will be a time for him to cry." Song Afan was stunned when he heard this, and the look in his eyes when he looked at his own mother suddenly became extremely complicated. Song Mufan's physical fitness is good. As a descendant of the expeditionary force, his physical and mental strength have also received systematic training. Driving an ordinary mecha or a simple starship is not a problem. But facing mutants, little Song Mufan is really a little brother. When the supply and demand relationship of mutants is not equal, what should the studious Song Mufan do? Either slow down, or ask for help, or increase your strength, or form a team. No matter what Song Mufan chooses, it will be a challenge for him. Thinking of this, Song Afan couldn't help but shudder. She is indeed the woman who took Song Si in and made her obedient. This mother of hers is really not simple. Ruthless. Too ruthless. Chapter 645. Song Afan's 3 years older than Song Mufan were not in vain. Song Afan demonstrated the meaning of a man of insight as a hero. Tang Fan, a ruthless man at the top of the family, had just finished discussing study and experiment with Song Mufan when Song Afan took the initiative to come over. He introduced himself, took the initiative to talk, served tea and water, added rice and dishes, and was so attentive. Song Afan wanted to curry favor with Tang Fan, and Tang Fan wanted to make up for it. The atmosphere between the two was naturally very harmonious. Before the meal was over, the mother and daughter were as close as sisters. This wave of operations stunned Song Mufan and suddenly gave him a new understanding of Song Afan's bottom line. So, when Song Mufan left the restaurant, he gave his sister a look of contempt. Because of this look, Song Afan silently swallowed a reminder that was on the tip of his tongue. How can a child standing on the cloud know what a mouthful of mud tastes like if he doesn't fall down or something? How can the arrogant little prince remember the kindness of his sister if he doesn't suffer a little at the hands of the two old foxes? Song Afan snorted, turned around and took her mother Tang Fan's hand, and continued to build a mother-daughter relationship. Tang Fan was very satisfied with Song Afan's knowledge and interest. It's impolite not to return the favor. Since his daughter is so sensible, Tang Fan will naturally not treat her unfairly. Open your own laboratory and let Song Afan choose mechas and so on. In the entire alliance, there is no one else except Tang Fan. And Song Afan, who was short of money, ate a few delicious meals from Tang Fan. At the end of the vacation, Song Afan really felt a little reluctant to part with his mother Tang Fan. Of course, Song Afan was more reluctant to part with his cheap brother. Especially reluctant to part with his own cheap brother. The good show is about to be staged. After all, with Song Mufan's IQ, this is very likely to be the only Waterloo in his life. Missing it, it's really a pity. In order not to regret for the rest of her life, Song Afan consciously strengthened her relationship with Tang Fan. While successfully seeing Song Mufan's jokes, the relationship between mother and daughter became stronger. The only drawback is, there are many more and more tedious tasks assigned by General Song for no reason. With a clingy and jealous father, what can Song Afan do? Of course, accept it. So, this love and kill game initiated by Tang Fan and participated by the whole family officially kicked off. The family of four has since started this somewhat special way of getting along. In the process of harming each other, the family of four has wins and losses. Of course, the one with the greatest chance of winning is Tang Fan, who has the highest status in the family and is not low in IQ, EQ, and ability. As for the loser, Unexpectedly, it is not the little Song Mufan, who has the lowest status in the family and is not online in EQ. He spent most of his time in the training ground, library and laboratory, so he had fewer chances to make mistakes. In addition, after this kid climbed out of the pit of Tang Fan, he learned from his mistakes and chose to take mecha driving. With his intelligence and combat power, his chance of winning was maintained at around 70%, which was better than Song Afan, a flatterer, and Song Si, who liked to protect Tang Fan from disasters. Although this way of getting along was a bit non-mainstream, it was more humane and more acceptable than the way everyone got along in a proper but cold way during the years when Tang Fan was in a coma. End of chapter 646. In these fierce battles, Tang Fan was always the one who stood invincible. Once or twice, that's fine. This has always been the case, and it must have attracted the attention of Song Afan and Song Mufan. The siblings were not stupid, so they naturally began to observe and study Tang Fan. The more the siblings understood Tang Fan, the more they felt that their mother was like a book that could never be finished, a treasure that could never be dug out. Her life experience was bizarre, and she had experienced ups and downs, but she never bowed her head, but led towards the sun. When she was poor, she did not flatter anyone. When she was rich, she did not abandon anyone. She was extraordinary, and she had more or less dabbled in various disciplines, but she had never set foot in the field of pharmacy. She was smart, but she never played tricks in people's hearts. This unique woman in the entire alliance, from scratch, one half of the mecha casting world, and also had perfect love and long-lasting friendship. She seemed to have a kind of magic. A kind of magic that makes people curious and want to understand her. A kind of magic that makes people want to know more about her. The more you know about her, the more you can't stop. Song Afan and Song Mufan, the siblings, approached Tang Fan's world for the first time, and then, they never walked out again. Because every time they get closer to Tang Fan, there will be new discoveries. It is also because of understanding Tang Fan that the siblings learn to examine themselves and see their own shortcomings. Especially the little friend Song Mufan, who finally lived up to everyone's expectations and walked out of the library and laboratory, faced with social shortcomings, and made friends. As they grow up, the number of times the family of four falls into the trap is getting less and less, and the pits they dig for each other are getting more and more hidden. At the same time, their ability to prevent being pitted, and how to quickly climb up after falling into the pit, is also steadily improving. For this ability, the siblings didn't feel anything at home, at school, or even in the expeditionary force. When they walked out of the Savage Star region, they were the only ones who tricked others and no one could trick them. The siblings realized how much their own model of pitting each other helped them. Even the marriage problem that most people in the alliance would have a headache about, the siblings successfully solved it with the digging skills they had cultivated since childhood. The first heir of the Blake family and the outstanding graduate of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy were simply vulnerable to the digging skills of the Song siblings. The siblings got married quite early. After all, the burden of the expeditionary army in Tang's Metro was not light. How could they bear it without finding a helper? However, even if they got married and had someone to share the burden, the siblings were still busy. So, when others were fighting for the family property, Song Afan and Song Mufan were digging holes for each other and trying to throw their burdens on each other. When they really couldn't throw it away, the siblings thought of a stupid move at the same time. When Tang Fan stood in the medical room of the expeditionary army, waiting for his granddaughter to break out of the shell, his mood could only be described as mixed feelings. Did she have to learn how to be a grandmother before she learned how to be a good mother? A grandmother who is less than 80 years old? Just thinking about it makes me excited. Looking at his newlywed son and daughter-in-law, who are in love with each other, and his daughter-in-law's relatively flat belly, Tang Fan nodded his back teeth. Perhaps, she still needs to learn how to be a qualified grandmother? Yes. The Song siblings, who couldn't trick each other, chose another way, tricking their children. As for how to trick and whether it was successful, that was another story. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.